The man who repairs kitchen equipment for a living almost never buys new kitchen equipment. Think about that for a second. The person who opens these machines every single day, who sees which gears crack first, which motors burn out first, which expensive appliances die after barely 2 years, goes home and cooks on something built half a century ago. Today, I'm going to show you 5 discontinued kitchen tools that repair technicians and serious cooks still chase down across America. The ones they grab from estate sales before anyone else notices them, the ones they drive hours to pick up, the ones they restore with their own hands and proudly keep in their kitchens. And the machine at number 2 can do something no modern appliance can do anymore. I had never even heard of it until a repair technician told me the story. When I looked into it, I realized he was telling the truth. Let us begin. Number 5, the Sunbeam Mixmaster. My mother owned one, avocado green. It sat on the counter beside the toaster for as long as I can remember. Every birthday cake I had as a child came out of that machine. When she passed away, I took it home with me. I plugged it in expecting trouble. It ran like the day she bought it. Back in 1930, the Sunbeam Corporation introduced the Mixmaster to America after Swedish engineer Ivar Jeppsson designed it in Chicago. Almost overnight, it became the best-selling stand mixer in the country. And these early machines were not built like modern appliances. They were built like equipment, real metal gears, powerful motors with genuine cooling systems, 12 solid mechanical speeds controlled by a heavy dial that clicked with authority, no flimsy electronics, no touchscreens, no disposable parts. The Model 12, produced through the 1950s and 1960s, became the version collectors and repair technicians still hunt today. Chrome body, stainless steel, a motor strong enough to run for hours without overheating. And it was not just a mixer. You could attach a meat grinder, a juicer, a slicer. One machine handled nearly everything in the kitchen. Millions were sold. And unbelievably, many are still running right now. Then the company changed hands. Again, and again, and again. Allegheny International bought Sunbeam in 1981 and shut down most of the Chicago factories. Then Allegheny collapsed into bankruptcy. Then came CEO Al Dunlap, who fired huge portions of the workforce and manipulated the books so badly that the SEC banned him for life from running a public company. Then another bankruptcy. Then Jarden Corporation bought what remained. Then Newell Brands bought Jarden. 6 ownership changes in roughly 35 years. And with every new owner, the quality dropped lower. The Mixmaster name still exists today. You can still buy one, but it is not the same machine. The originals were built in America with metal and weight and pride. The newer versions are lighter, cheaper, and made for replacement instead of repair. So how do you spot a real one? Look for models 7, 10, 11, or 12. The classic mid-century versions have that bullet-shaped chrome body. Pick it up, feel the weight. Turn the beaters slowly by hand. If the gears feel solid and smooth, you probably found a good one. And the crazy part? Estate sales and thrift stores are full of them. $20 to $60 for a machine designed to outlive generations. Many only need a new cord and fresh grease in the gearbox. There are even specialists who rebuild these things completely. Full disassembly, cleaning, regreasing, rewiring, speed control adjustments, bringing dead machines back to life. If you find one that does not run, there's a good chance it can still be saved. My mother's Mixmaster is 63 years old. It still works perfectly, and I would not trade it for anything sitting on a store shelf today. Number 4, the Oster Kitchen Center. Now imagine this, one motor powering everything in your kitchen. Mixer, blender, meat grinder, food slicer, dough hooks, food processor, one base, one motor, one machine sitting on your counter, doing the work of an entire modern kitchen. That was the Oster Kitchen Center in the late 1970s. The idea was brilliant. Instead of buying separate appliances with separate motors and separate cords, you bought one heavy-duty base and snapped on whichever attachment you needed. The mixer tilted upward for bowl access, just like premium stand mixers today. The blender locked directly onto the same power base. The meat grinder connected to the side and ran off the same motor. It even offered food processor attachments before most Americans even knew what a food processor was. One motor, one purchase, an entire kitchen system. The Regency model became the legend, 10 or 12 speeds depending on the version. A motor powerful enough to knead bread dough, crush frozen drinks, and grind meat without hesitation. Owners still talk about them on repair forums today. One man wrote that he bought his nearly 50 years ago and it still works perfectly. The only maintenance he ever performed was replacing the grease inside the gears. That was it. The kitchen center disappeared in 1994. Why? Because Oster was bought by Sunbeam. And you already know what happened to Sunbeam. Allegheny, Dunlap, bankruptcy, Jarden, Newell. The same endless ownership carousel that hollowed out the Mixmaster eventually killed the kitchen center too. Today, if you want the same capabilities, you buy 4 separate appliances. 4 motors, 4 cords, 4 machines waiting to fail. Oster solved that problem over 40 years ago with one simple system, and almost nobody builds anything like it anymore. Finding one is still possible. Estate sales, thrift stores, online marketplaces. A complete Oster kitchen center with attachments usually sells for $50 to $150. The motor base matters most. If it runs smoothly through every speed, you are in good shape. Replacement parts are becoming harder to locate, but specialty dealers still carry gears, bowls, blender jars, and attachments. The internal gears need fresh grease every few years. And the plastic housing screws sometimes strip out, so owners replace them with small bolts. Simple repairs, simple engineering. One technician told me he owns 3 of them, one in the kitchen. 2 backups in the garage. He laughed and said, "Why would I buy 5 separate appliances when this one already does everything?" Honestly, it is hard to argue with him. Number 3, the Hobart-era KitchenAid. I already made an entire video about this machine because the story behind it is almost unbelievable today. Before Whirlpool bought KitchenAid in 1986, these mixers were manufactured by Hobart Corporation. And Hobart was not some trendy appliance company chasing quarterly profits. They built commercial equipment, industrial equipment, machines designed for bakeries, restaurants, and institutions where failure was unacceptable. That mindset carried directly into the early KitchenAid mixers. All metal gears, heavy metal housings, thick components built to survive decades of constant use. These were not countertop decorations. They were workhorses. Then Whirlpool took over, and slowly, plastic started replacing metal. You already know how that story usually ends, but what most people do not know is how to recognize the real ones. The holy grail is the K5A model. 5-quart capacity, bowl lift design, massive weight, solid feel. You flip one over and check the metal plate underneath. If the manufacturing date is before 1988, you are looking at a true Hobart-era machine. That is the one collectors want. That is the one repair technicians trust. And surprisingly, you can still find them. Estate sales remain the best hunting ground. Prices usually range from $75 to $200 depending on the condition. And when you get one home, the repairs are simple. Repack the grease because it hardens over time. Replace the power cord if the insulation is cracked. Do that, and chances are the mixer will outlive you. There is a reason Julia Child trusted hers for decades. When she donated her kitchen to the Smithsonian in 2001, museum staff asked about the mixer sitting in the middle of everything. She called it absolutely marvelous. Then she said something that stuck with me. She said it would last the rest of your life. She was right, because these mixers were built during a time when companies expected products to survive for generations, not product cycles. But even the Hobart KitchenAid looks ordinary compared to what comes next, because the machine at number 2 can do something that sounds almost impossible today. Number 2, the Chambers Model C. A repair technician in Baltimore told me a story I genuinely thought was nonsense the first time I heard it. He said a woman places brisket into a deep insulated well on top of her stove before going to bed. No flame. No gas, running overnight, nothing active at all. By morning, the meat is perfectly tender. I thought he was exaggerating. He was not. Beginning in 1912, the Chambers Company in Shelbyville, Indiana, manufactured gas ranges built around something they called retained heat cooking. And the engineering behind it was extraordinary. The ovens were wrapped on every side with thick rock wool insulation. Once the oven reached temperature, you could actually shut the gas off completely, and the stored heat inside the insulated chamber would continue cooking food for hours. Their slogan said it all: cook with the gas turned off. And this was not marketing hype. The insulation worked so well that a chamber stove could roast a turkey, bake bread, or slow-cook stew overnight entirely on retained heat. No continuous flame, no endless gas consumption. Chambers even advertised that their ranges used 1/3 to 1/2 less gas than ordinary stoves of the time. Then there was the thermowell, a deep insulated compartment built directly into the cooktop itself. You could bring soup to a boil, turn off the burner, seal the well, and the soup would continue simmering gently for hours using stored heat alone. Modern appliances still cannot do this. The Model C, built from the late 1940s through the 1950s, became the most sought-after version among collectors. And these stoves were beautiful. Buttercup yellow, copper tone, white porcelain trimmed with chrome. The porcelain coating itself carried a 25-year guarantee. Think about that for a moment. A company confident enough to guarantee a stove surface for 25 years. And many of these ranges are still operating today, more than 70 years later. These things weighed over 400 pounds. Heavy gauge steel, cast iron, massive doors, massive hinges, built like bank vaults. Then came the same story you have already heard again and again. Ownership changes. Production moved from Indiana to Mississippi during the 1960s. Investment declined. Quality slipped. And by the early 1990s, the company was finished. And when Chambers disappeared, something disappeared with it. Because no modern manufacturer truly replaced retained heat cooking. The technology still exists, the demand still exists, but the industry has almost no interest in building stoves capable of lasting 80 years. If you want one today, your best option is a professional vintage stove restoration shop. A fully restored Chambers Model C usually costs between $3,000 and $8,000 depending on condition. Unrestored units sometimes appear online for $500 to $2,000, but restoring them safely is absolutely critical. Gas valves, thermostats, and connections all need professional inspection before use. That part cannot be skipped. And yet, people who own chamber stoves say the same thing over and over again. Once they start cooking on one, they never want anything else. And honestly, after learning how these things worked, I understand exactly why. And now, number 1. The blender that helped cure polio. That sounds exaggerated until you hear the full story. In 1936, bandleader Fred Waring stood backstage after a radio broadcast when an inventor approached him carrying a strange broken machine and an even stranger dream. The inventor was Frederick Osius. He had patented something he called a disintegrating mixer. The idea was promising, but the machine barely worked. He needed money. More importantly, he needed someone willing to believe in it. He had heard Fred Waring loved gadgets and experimental technology, so he took his shot. Waring invested $25,000 of his own money into the project, an enormous amount at the time. Then Waring's engineer, Ed Lee, completely redesigned the machine until it finally performed the way Osius had imagined. After that, they brought in German-born industrial designer Peter Muller-Munck to give the machine its final appearance. Beautiful, streamlined, modern. In September of 1937, the machine debuted at the National Restaurant Show in Chicago under the name Miracle Mixer. Price? $29.75. That equals more than $600 in today's money. A year later, the name changed to the Waring Blender, spelled with an O so the name could be trademarked. And then something extraordinary happened. Hospitals began using the blender for specialized diets. Research laboratories started adopting it for scientific experiments. Scientists realized the machine could blend materials with incredible consistency and reliability. Then Dr. Jonas Salk used a specially sealed Waring aseptic dispersal blender while preparing culture materials during development of the polio vaccine. Think about that. A kitchen blender became part of one of the greatest medical breakthroughs in American history. By 1954, more than 1 million units had been sold. The Waring blender became standard equipment in restaurants, bars, hospitals, and serious home kitchens all across America. And like the other machines on this list, the early versions were built like they expected to survive forever. Heavy die-cast metal bases, thick glass jars capable of handling boiling liquids without cracking, simple 2-speed controls with mechanical toggle switches that almost never failed, no digital panels, no fragile electronics, no unnecessary complexity. If the blade assembly wore down, you could rebuild it yourself in 10 minutes using a wrench. Then in 1998, Conair bought Waring, and that was the turning point. To be fair, Waring still manufactures commercial blenders today, and some are still respected in bars and restaurants. But the home models changed, especially the Waring Pro consumer line. More plastic, more electronics, more failure points. The vintage Waring blenders from the 1940s through the 1980s are the versions repair technicians, bartenders, and collectors still chase down today. Chrome bases, glass jars, heavy switches, simple construction, machines that feel almost indestructible, and the prices are shocking. Estate sales, thrift shops, antique stores, $30 to $80 for a blender that can outlast most modern kitchens. The easiest way to identify the good ones? Lift it. If the base feels heavy enough to stop a door, you probably found the real thing. Check the toggle switch. It should click firmly with authority. Spin the blade assembly by hand and make sure it moves freely. Most old Waring blenders only need a fresh gasket and a deep cleaning before going right back to work. The motors almost never burn out because they were originally built to commercial standards. A bartender from Chicago once wrote to me about his own Waring blender from 1971. He said the machine had crushed more ice than he could possibly count over the last 50 years. And in all that time, he only replaced the rubber gasket twice. That is it. 50 years, 2 gaskets. That is what built to last actually means. 5 kitchen machines, 5 different stories, but all connected by the same truth. They were built during an era when manufacturers expected products to survive for decades. Simple engineering, heavy materials, repairable designs, machines created by people who would have been embarrassed if their work failed early. And almost every one of them disappeared for the same reason. Not because they stopped working, because someone discovered there was more profit in products that break. The Sunbeam Mixmaster was weakened by endless ownership changes and corporate scandals. The Oster Kitchen Center vanished after the same ownership carousel consumed Sunbeam. The Hobart KitchenAid slowly changed after Whirlpool focused on cost reduction. Chambers faded through declining investment and shifting ownership. And the Waring blender, a machine funded by a band leader used by scientists, trusted by bartenders for half a century, eventually landed inside a corporation better known for making hair dryers. Different companies, different histories, same ending. The best kitchen tools stopped being built the way they once were, but they still exist, hidden in basements, sitting in thrift stores, covered in dust at estate sales, waiting for someone who understands what they really are. Now you know, and maybe the next time you walk past some old, heavy appliance sitting on a forgotten shelf, you will stop for a second before dismissing it, because there is a chance you are looking at a machine that already survived longer than anything being built today. If you have ever owned one of these machines, or if there is another old appliance in your kitchen that simply refuses to die, then you already understand exactly what this story was really about.